I am your host, Kemi Amin, and this is Who Are You? A podcast on purpose. Join me for conversations with people near and far about how they are finding their way, with one simple yet complex question. Who are you?
My name is Marquise, and I am Marquise.
Episode 8. For this conversation, I had the pleasure of speaking with Marquise Stillwell. With a practice spanning across 2 decades, Marquise's journey began with a curiosity for people and spaces that later developed into a passion for designing systems that make all environments better for everyone. In 2009, Marquise founded Openbox, a design and research studio based in New York City that works at the intersection of people, cities, and planet. Within Openbox, he later co-founded Opendox, a film company that tells lesser-known narratives around art, science, nature, and politics. At Opendox, Marquise has executive produced films such as Shield and Spear, The Limestone Conflict, Marfa, and most recently, The New Bauhaus. A creative entrepreneur, investor, and cultural ally, Marquise's continuous focus is on making big ideas tangible for all people. He believes that we can help inform the future of cities by thinking about people first and buildings and objects second. Marquise is also the co-founder of Deem Journal, a publication focused on design and social practice. Enjoy my conversation with Marquise Stillwell. To start, how are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, it's a beautiful day here, and yeah, I'm excited to have a conversation with you, learn more about you and what you do as well.
Yeah, for sure. It looks nice and sunny out there. We've been dealing with fires here in California, but we're getting through it.
Yeah.
How have you been processing just all the things that have been happening in the world, politically, socially, environmentally, all the things?
Yeah, no, for me, obviously, there's always this moment of pause and recognizing the moment, acknowledging that a lot of people are suffering, a lot of people have been hurt both by COVID and by police brutality, and living in this escalation of fear. I would say for Black and Brown, we've unfortunately grown accustomed to these things even before you could videotape them.
Yep.
And I always joke with friends, and these preconditions, like when you talk about COVID, I was like, we've always had these preconditions within our life, and we've always been seen, unfortunately, as a virus in many ways as well. So there's all these crossing metaphors between the actual virus and the social justice virus that this country has against our brown bodies. And so I've processed that. And then I also look at the opportunity that we have right now because of the elevated conversations. We have a responsibility to continue to amplify those conversations, not let them settle, not let people get comfortable.
Yeah.
Too many times we've accommodated discomfort of our white friends, and not allowing them to feel the discomfort that we also feel. And I think that we're doing an injustice when we stop that. And so I think there's a responsibility for us to continue to push this narrative and really take advantage of the momentum we have right now. So those are the things that I've been thinking about.
Yeah, it's super important I think there are a lot of people, Black folks in particular, who may be a little bit critical or cynical or distrustful of a lot of the newfound, Black Lives Matter advocacy for non-Black groups and organizations and corporations. But I do think that it's a great opportunity to take this and take the reins and run with it ourselves.
We need that.
Yeah.
We need that. They're not going to get change if they're continue to be novice. And so you need to start as a novice. You have to wake up. And unfortunately, these movements are taking the place of the education that we should have already received, um, K through 12. It's at the basic level. We're not in the history books. We're not on the reading list. If we are, we're always placed in a position of asking to assimilate or to be submissive.
Mm-hmm.
And we need a better narrative around what does it mean to adapt, and what does it mean to stand with power.
Mm.
And so this is very new. Of course, there are people who were unaware, and we have to be also aware of that shock moment,
Mm-hmm.
because it's frustrating every time you hear someone say, "Oh my God, I can't believe this." Your disbelief is killing us. And so
That's a word. That's the
yeah,
word.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a balance.
Yeah, for sure. So you have an undergraduate degree in advertising, is that correct?
Yeah,
And then you also have two master's degree, an MBA and in economics.
yeah.
Can you talk us through your intention behind pursuing like each of those degrees? What did
Oh,
you learn from each
such a
of them?
waste. Such a waste of time.
Really? Because they sound very much like they might feed into what you're doing.
No, absolutely not. Look, education is a framework.
Mm-hmm.
I do believe in education,
Yeah.
but it's a framework. And I'm very careful with always trying to distinguish ourselves through this Western ideal of learning, this ideal of the we for the me,
Mm.
versus the me for the we. Uh, and my degrees were for us, not for me,
Mm.
period. And so, who cares if you have an MBA or an MA in economics? What are you doing with it? Are you sharing it? Are you giving it away? Because if it's just for you, it doesn't matter. And educational systems today are built for the we all go to school for me to have everything that I want, versus for me to learn so that we all can become better.
That's an
Right.
interesting approach. Yeah.
So I my education is just, it was a framework for me learning. You never stop learning.
Yeah.
I'm not belittling the opportunity that some people never have. I understand that, but I also understand you have to put purpose to your privilege. And my privilege of
Mm.
having those degrees, I also have the privilege to be reflective and understand what we should be learning, how we should be learning, and
Yeah.
what learning should be for. And it should be for us, not just me. So I'm always careful when I see people put every damn degree they have and all this stuff on their LinkedIn and everything. Like it's up there, but it's very rare that I have it in my bios. It's not something that I like to put on my bio, because I'm a representative of my grandparents.
Mm.
I'm representative of my aunts and uncles, and my brother and sister, and everybody that has put into me. That's where my education came from being at the parks and playing basketball, and the hard times that I've gone through. I mean, that's where I learned to adapt. Education did not teach me how to adapt at
Mm.
all. Matter of fact, I felt like education made me a little bit too rigid, and I had to unlearn some of that rigidity through my process of my career. Again, I'm not belittling education; it's very important. I think it's a great platform, but I feel like sometimes we over over credit
Mm.
um, what it is. So
Yeah.
yeah,
So you feel like, I mean, it's interesting because when I went to grad school, I had a very difficult time because I was one of few in
yeah,
my program, a Black woman. I was the only Black person in my
yeah,
program.
yeah,
Uh, and so I did, I learned some things in the program as far as curriculum, but I learned more about how to deal with people as a Black woman in a space where
yeah, yeah.
I,
Absolutely. The social emotional development through education is priceless, and I get that. Um, not
but I
seeing
do hear what
myself in
you're
books. Yeah, I'm not seeing myself in books.
saying. Hmm.
Not seeing myself apart. And maybe my attitude would be a little slightly different if I would have seen myself. But I still really believe that education should be me for the we,
Yeah.
and that we all graduate when I graduate, and that I need to give it away. And what that looks like in practical terms is what I try to do as much as possible. If I see a young brother who's starting a business, like, yo, let me help you out. Let me give
Yeah.
you some advice. And so I'm constantly giving advice on accounting and having a lawyer and what does it look like, to check out a contract, how to ask the right questions. All those things were great. But it's only great if I give it away. My MBA
Yes.
is for everybody. Like all my boys, whoever didn't go to school, I don't, whatever. I got you.
I love that. I love that. The me going to school for the we. I
That's
love
right.
that. Yes.
That's right.
That yeah, I'm about that life for sure. So I love that. I wanted to know how you got started with Openbox in particular.
Yeah, I mean, Openbox is just a continuation of how I've lived my life. I've always been someone that when something broke, you fixed it. And I was always being strategic around how I, paid for school, how I paid for life, how I got gas money, how I could eat, and I would say that being a person of color, uh, we're naturally dynamic. And to be a great designer, you have to be dynamic in your approach, meaning that you can pull from so many different resources. You're cross disciplinary. You can think strategically while also being very open to live in the gray areas and be vulnerable. My body is constantly being tested in regards to what it means to be vulnerable and walk around. Um, you know, which is why I argue that design without black and brown people influencing is not fully what design is supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so in starting Open Box, I wanted to design something, build something that had a full circular economy of resources, from people to venture to storytelling, that allowed us to have all these touch points along the way to make sure when we're thinking about the system design of incarceration, what does it mean to support our brothers and sisters who are coming out and those who are also going in. How do we think about that? It's hard to think about that and not think about the resources that they need in order to keep many of them out of those situations, like education, basic things like clean water, which is why I do a lot of work in the environment. Uh, and then you think about sea level rising and climate change and the climate refugees. They're going to unfortunately look more like you and I than they're going to look, like Western Europeans.
Sure.
And so I have to do environmental work, period. It is imperative that designers think about that. And so it's not me just being all over the place. It's me thinking in a systems manner, so a systems designer manner. And that's why I created Openbox. And that is what this iteration of my life is looking like.
Yeah, but I mean, you have the systems design approach, but you're thinking about particular audiences, which I do think is very interesting because there's a concept in, what is called universal design, but the dips, which I am forgetting the name of the dips in the sidewalks when we cross the street, were designed for people who are wheelchair bound, but they benefit so many other people. So
No,
when
of
you
course.
design specifically for a group that may not be thought about or forgotten about or disregarded, you inadvertently can design for a lot of people, if not everyone.
That's right. That's right. If you really understand the wider spectrum of the needs, where you focus on those who suffer most, which is why really focusing our work on designing for better urban living, thinking about how cities are changing, and the fact that many of us don't see ourselves in our cities anymore. Uh, that not only has an effect on the way we see the world, it has effect on the way we see ourselves. And I really believe that the things that are happening in this country across the board, whether you're black or white or brown or whoever you are, is because you're no longer seeing yourself in the neighborhoods that you grew up in. And I would say people in Appalachia is just as much as someone in Bed-Stuy. They no longer can believe that there's hope for their children, or their children's children.
Yeah. You've worked with GirlTrek, which is a nationwide organization leading a health movement encouraging Black women to walk, which is
Yeah.
so simple yet so powerful. Can you talk a little
Yeah.
bit about that collaboration?
Yeah, no, it was an amazing collaboration. One of the case studies that we have at Openbox, and just reimagining what is the freedom, right? The freedom to be able to walk um, in your neighborhood, the freedom to express who you are as a Black woman was really the core idea of what they were trying to express.
Mhm.
Um, they don't talk about weight loss and doing this. It's not about that. It's about, I want to be able to just walk and enjoy myself
Mhm.
and have some healthy habits. And healthy habits aren't just the movement of your feet, it's the socializing of yourself in
Mm,
the community
yeah.
that
Yeah.
you're not always able to feel safe in,
Yep.
right? And it's also continuing to reimagine the image of the Black woman, and how she's able to express herself. And so now it's an amazing project. I mean, these are the types of projects that have been at the baseline core of building Open Box. And we traditionally didn't go after a lot of the larger brands,
Mhm.
um, and really wanted to focus on building out a good number of case studies that really spoke to the value system that we want to live, and the types of projects that we want to do as we're continuing to scale up to some of those larger clients. We know that we can walk into those clients with good examples of the type of work that we want to do. And
Yeah.
that's really important. I was just talking to some Parsons students earlier this afternoon here in New York City, and they were asking about pricing models and how do you charge for different things. And I said, look, at the baseline level, you have to make sure that you're understanding your value system first
Mhm.
before you think about what you charge. um, you have to understand why you're asking for a certain return on your work, because you can end up selling out on your value system to make a lot of money,
Mm.
and making a lot of money is not going to scale your organization appropriately, because you'll end up owing yourself to these larger corporations that don't really care about your core values at all.
Right, right. Yeah. And speaking of core values, in a medium.com statement you published on June 23rd, which is also on your website, you said, racism is not new, racism is not rare. So it's not my job to take the blinders off your eyes if you refuse to see the racism around you. It's not my job to scream in your ears to make you hear. It's also not my job to try to appeal to your empathy by telling you how I feel every time I leave my apartment and cross paths with the police. And in your work with the hospitality industry in particular, you talk about one's experience when entering a hotel, how one is perceived and received in those spaces. And you have a very interesting vantage point as a Black man designing for spaces like this. What has your experience been like navigating as a Black man in design and designed spaces?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. It's one of those things where it's a balance between, I'm a designer. I'm a designer that's Black. I rarely like to describe myself as a Black designer.
Mhm,
I don't call Box a Black firm, Black studio at all,
mhm,
because I can do work for anyone. I can manage and do all the aspects. So when I'm navigating, I'm making sure that I'm presenting that I can do the work, and I want to be hired for the value that I bring to the work. Me being a person of color, being a Black man, um, does add just new value because of my lived experience, value that you probably never had before.
mhm.
But at the end of the day, I also want to just be me. I want to just enjoy my life. Um, and a friend, an artist, Derek Adams. Um, he talks about Black leisure radical as a radical protest. This idea of us being in a swimming pool and relaxing. And he and I got a conversation about one of my favorite photos of Dr. King is of him in a swimming pool, just kind of relaxing,
Yeah,
right? I mean, that's to me Black radical protest,
for sure.
right? It's our ability through everything that we go through to be able to seek solace and relax in it, knowing the things that we have to deal with every day, things that which is why we dance, why we love music, why we are like so poetic when it comes to sports, and we make it look like it's effortless.
Yeah.
It's because our muscles have been trained and built for dealing with this struggle in so many dynamic ways.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as a designer, I know that I have that. Empathy is a muscle, right? Empathy is not just a way of thinking or approach; it's a muscle.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, this country is empathetically out of shape, and we need to build our muscles for understanding the other, understanding who we are. And it is really upon us to live as an example of that. But
Mm-hmm.
it's not for me to beg and plead. If you want to learn from me, fine, come learn. But you need to do the work as well. And this country needs to stop looking at it as a short sprint, a rapid response. And we are out of shape, and America needs to get into shape. And they need to be empathetically in shape in order for the change that we need to actually happen.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love the idea too of realizing us as Black people realizing our humanity and not just our struggle alone. And that the things that bind us are not just our struggles and that we're more
That's
than that.
right.
Um,
Absolutely.
and so I
Absolutely.
really love that idea. And so what would you say your work says about you?
Um, I don't know because I'm at the apex of my story. I'm still developing my story, and I have something on my closet where I remind myself of thoughts. Is that let my life tell my story.
Mm, mhm,
And I've never been someone that is into awards or into over reflecting. I am someone that's always looking to next. Doesn't mean I don't stop and say my things and recognize. Uh, but again, it's the me for the we.
mhm,
It's not the we for the me. This is not about me at all.
mhm.
This is about us and um, my reflection of who I am is based on what I'm able to do to affect us. And as long as we are still struggling, I'm still struggling. My
Mm,
story is incomplete when we are still incomplete.
yeah. What's next with Openbox?
For us, reimagining the design practice as more of a distributed system, and I'm really excited about where we're going in regards to post COVID, and you and I being right now on Zoom, and our ability to do this, it would have been a little bit more difficult or awkward if to do this pre-COVID. I'm like, yo, I gotta get on a video. All right, well, let me figure out where I can go. And now I'm set up. Right, I can get on, and everyone has the equipment now, and you just make it happen. And so I believe once we move through this, I believe that it's going to democratize design even more in regards to how we practice and how we engage in design research. So I'm really excited about that. We moved our studio down to Red Hook, Brooklyn. We were in Flatiron area of Manhattan,
Mhm.
and the studio is going to be truly a studio where we come eventually together to do project work. I don't think that in the future you will see teams working in studios heads down for 8-10 hours without collaborating, right?
Yeah.
Studios we don't have to do that. You can do that anywhere now.
Yeah.
And I feel like the design studio of the future is going to have to be more flexible in the way that it's working with its employees and the way that we're engaging. So I'm really excited about that because I feel like it's opened up our ability to bring in designers from different parts of the world. Um, Still having a core group of designers in New York City is always important. I still believe in community, um, but I think that we can look at it differently um, as far as the approach. So that's what I feel like the future of Openbox is right now from our core structure. Um, and then, yeah, we'll go from there with the projects that we're looking at and working on.
Yeah, that sounds great. I look forward to the future of Openbox. Learn more about Marquise and his work at openbox.com. That's OPNBX.com and opendox.com. That's OPNDX.com. Watch episodes of this podcast on YouTube. There is always a link in the show notes. Be sure to subscribe and hit the notification button. You can also listen to episodes wherever you get your podcasts. To get more content not shared anywhere else, subscribe to the email list at waypodcast.com. That's WAYPODCAST.com. Until our next conversation, I am your host, Kemi Amin.